Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something pretty serious, violence. Most people don't like to think about it.
No, they don't. But understanding it, that can really make a difference for your own safety.
Exactly. So we're pulling key ideas from The Little Black Book of Violence by Wilder and Kane. It says young man in the title, but honestly, this stuff is relevant for everyone.
Absolutely. It's like a condensed field guide.
Hmm.
How to handle potential violence. The authors use martial arts insights, but also like real world stuff, intense scenarios, expert takes.
Right. It goes way beyond just, how to throw a punch. It's the before, the during, the aftermath.
The whole picture.
So our goal here in this deep dive is to give you the most critical, actionable bits. How to spot danger, how to avoid it if possible, and what to do if you can't, without drowning you in details.
Let's get into it. The foundation really is what happens before anything kicks off.
Okay, where do we start?
Awareness.
Hmm.
Situational awareness. The book frames it less as a skill you learn, like riding a bike, and more like an attitude.
An attitude. How so?
It's about being, engaged with what's around you, not just physically present, but mentally tuned in.
Yeah, it's that tricky line, isn't it? Between being completely zoned out and being, like, constantly terrified.
Exactly. Finding the balance. They use this color code system, which is pretty helpful.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that.
Yeah, condition yellow,
Uh-huh.
or just aware. That's kind of the goal for everyday life.
Hmm.
Relaxed, but vigilant.
So, not expecting trouble around every corner.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But you're paying attention. You notice the people, the cars, where the exits are, stuff that could become important. You're basically ready to notice if something's off.
And the book makes a really interesting point here about targets.
Yes. Bad guys, predators.
Yeah.
They want an easy win. They don't want a challenge. They don't want to fight.
So someone who looks alert, who looks like they're paying attention?
They're just less appealing. Much less appealing. You reduce your victim appeal, essentially.
Makes sense. They're looking for someone vulnerable.
Precisely. They prey on perceived weakness. And this awareness, it can even be that gut feeling, like when you're driving.
Yeah.
And you just know that car is about to swerve into your lane.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
That's often your subconscious picking up tiny cues, things your conscious mind hasn't quite pieced together yet.
So your first defense isn't physical, it's perception.
Exactly. It's that relaxed vigilance.
Yeah.
Scan your environment, be aware, but don't let fear take over. It makes you a harder target.
Okay, so awareness is step one. Foundational. Now, what about when things start to heat up? The book calls it Don't Get Caught Up in the Escalado Follies.
Right. That's about controlling your own reactions, specifically anger.
Anger is a tool, not just raw emotion.
Yes. Letting anger run wild. That has consequences, big ones. Professionally, personally, everywhere. It clouds your judgment.
Okay. And tied into this, they talk about something called the victim interview. That sounds unsettling.
It is, a bit. But it's important. Before an attack, potential aggressors are sizing people up. Could be conscious, could be subconscious. They're calculating their odds.
Like, can I take this person?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And the book really hammers this home.
Yeah.
The less you look and act like a victim during that assessment phase, the safer you generally are.
So what signals victim to them? What are they looking for?
Things like poor posture, slumped shoulders, avoiding eye contact, being distracted, looking lost or unsure.
And the opposite, confidence.
Yeah, walking tall, looking around, seeming aware. It signals, hey, this might be more trouble than it's worth. They even break down different types of interviews.
Like,
Hot, escalating, regular, silent, prolonged. Different ways this sizing up process can play out. But the core message is your body language, your demeanor. It speaks volumes before a word is said.
wow, okay. Project confidence, project awareness. Deterrence starts early.
It really does.
All right, so we're aware. We're trying not to escalate things ourselves. The next piece of advice is proactive. Don't let them get into position for attack. What does that look like?
This is about physical space and tactical advantage. Attackers love surprise. They love overwhelming force.
Makes sense.
So they might have weapons, they might have buddies with them, and they try to control the environment. They talk about herding.
Herding like sheep.
Kinda, yeah. Subtly maneuvering you, guiding you towards a place where you're more vulnerable. An alley, a confined space, away from other people.
Like backing you into a corner, literally or figuratively.
Exactly. Or making you think you're moving towards safety, but it's actually a trap, an ambush spot.
So knowing your surroundings is crucial again here. Escape routes.
Vital. Know your exits. Avoid those choke points, narrow hallways, doorways where you can get trapped. And if a place feels wrong, if you get that gut feeling, move towards light, towards people.
Because the attacker wants isolation.
Absolutely. More people means more witnesses, more potential interference, higher risk for them. They choose the time, the place. They already have advantages.
The element of surprise.
Huge. And picking a location that suits them maybe cuts off your escape.
They mention restrooms as an example. Confined, often isolated. Easier to control someone there.
It's a sobering thought. Vigilance even in mundane places.
And what about cutting from the herd?
Classic predator tactic. Isolate the target from the group. Makes them easier to manage.
So stick with people you trust, especially in iffy areas or at night.
Right. Don't wander off alone. Don't take risks that separate you from your friends or colleagues. Safety in numbers is a real thing. Don't make it easy for them to isolate you.
Okay, so a lot of this is about avoidance, maneuvering, staying safe before contact. But what if that doesn't work? The next point is don't be afraid to call in support.
Yeah, this sounds simple, but it's effective. Just yelling for help, dialing 911, even just reaching for your phone.
It changes the dynamic.
It can. It signals you're not helpless. It raises the stakes for the attacker. Someone might hear, someone might come, their actions might be recorded. It makes you a harder, riskier target. They want easy, remember.
Right. Disrupt their plan, make it less appealing.
Exactly. Even the threat of support can be a deterrent.
Okay. Makes sense. Now, shifting gears slightly. Your words are a weapon. Use them wisely. This isn't just physical.
Not at all. Words are incredibly powerful in these situations. What you say, how you say it. It can pour fuel on the fire, or it can douse the flames.
De-escalation versus escalation.
Precisely. Verbal de-escalation is a key skill.
Mm-hmm.
But careless words, saying the wrong thing out of anger or fear, that can make things much, much worse. Your voice can be a tool for safety or not.
They tell that pretty wild story about Wilder's friend and the car hood.
Oh, yeah. That was intense.
What was the takeaway there? It wasn't just random destruction.
No, it was a demonstration, a very raw, very unmistakable signal of his capacity for violence and his absolute resolve. It was meant to shock the other person into backing down completely. No ambiguity.
Definitely not something to try during rush hour.
No, please don't. But the underlying idea is communicating your boundaries, your seriousness, in a way that registers. Maybe not that way, but effectively.
And they also talk about changing the context to de-escalate.
Right. Like if things are getting heated, pointing out, hey, see those security cameras?
Shifting focus.
Yeah. Moves it from a personal you versus me thing to, hey, there are consequences here. We're being watched. It can cool things down, give someone a reason to back off without losing face.
Appealing to external factors. It's interesting. And what about admitting mistakes? Why is that helpful?
Because so often arguments spiral. When someone refuses to admit they messed up, it becomes about ego.
Right. Not about the original problem anymore.
Exactly. It turns into personal attacks. If you can just say, yeah, you know what, my bad, it can completely deflate the situation, takes the wind out of their sails, stops that ego battle before it starts.
Humility as a de-escalation tactic.
Got it.
Okay, now for a dose of reality. Hollywood fantasy versus brutal reality. This seems important.
Hugely important. Our ideas about violence are so skewed by movies and TV, like the one-punch knockout or the instant death from a single gunshot.
That's mostly fiction.
Often, yeah. People can be incredibly hard to stop. Adrenaline is powerful. The book gives the example of someone breaking their hand but just fighting right through the pain.
Wow. And they draw a big line between fights and combat.
Critical distinction. A fight might have implied rules, some level of restraint, like sports. Combat is survival. No rules. Anything goes.
They list things banned in MMA, right? Things that are potentially lethal in a real attack.
Yeah, eye gouges, biting, stomping someone on the ground. Stuff you'd never see in a ring, but which happens in real violence.
Yeah.
Because the goal isn't points, it's stopping the threat. Or worse.
No referees on the street.
None. And the story about the cop facing that unexpectedly strong woman in the alley, it drives home that you can't judge a threat by appearance.
Or the Audie Murphy example, mental toughness overcoming physical size.
Exactly. Grit, determination, the will to survive that can be decisive.
And yeah, the anecdote about the officer needing riot gear for a traffic stop, maybe a bit extreme.
Maybe.
Okay, probably extreme. But it illustrates that mindset of being prepared for absolutely anything because you just never know. Don't underestimate anyone.
Good advice. Okay, next. Little things are often important. This sounds like going back to awareness, but
Yeah.
finer details.
Precisely. It's about noticing the subtleties, the tiny clues, like seeing the clip of a knife tucked into a pocket.
Things most people wouldn't even register.
Or a tiny shift in body language, a glance, a change in posture that signals intent before the action happens. It's reading the nonverbal cues of potential violence.
That takes practice, I imagine.
It does. And that chilling story about the campus attack where people saw things but didn't intervene. Yeah, that was rough. Shows you can't rely on bystanders.
It's a harsh reality. People might not want to get involved. They might misunderstand what's happening. Or, as the book notes, they might even be friends with the attacker. You have to be your own first responder, basically.
Your safety is your responsibility.
Okay.
Know your territory. Seems straightforward, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, definitely. It's not just knowing your home address. It's about really understanding the places you frequent. Work, coffee shop, the gym, a friend's house.
Entrances, exits.
Potential hazards, escape routes where the blind spots are. Knowing the layout instinctively, it gives you options if something goes wrong. Familiarity helps preparedness.
They use that no-shirt guy story from the stadium. Shows how fast things escalate, especially with booze involved.
Alcohol is a huge factor in violence, yeah. Lowered inhibitions, heightened emotions. And they warn about having a partner or friend who actually encourages fights.
Huge red flag.
Massive. Someone who thrives on confrontation puts everyone around them at risk. The book also throws in the Bernhard Goetz reference.
The subway shooter.
Yeah, as a reminder that even someone who seems unassuming could be armed and prepared to use violence. And again, they stress that difference. Fight versus combat. Real violence is deadly serious.
Be aware of who you're with. And the account of Sergeant Marcus Young, that encounter during a routine call.
That's just brutal. A stark reminder of how unpredictable and savage violence can be. No Hollywood glamour there.
None at all. And then they get into personal space. Territoriality.
Yeah, it's a primal thing. People get defensive when their space is invaded. It can trigger aggression easily. Wilder's observation about the checkerboard in the jail cell.
How quickly territory is formed.
Instantly. It shows how deep-seated that instinct is. Respecting boundaries, both giving and expecting respect for yours, can prevent a lot of unnecessary conflict.
Okay. Now, a really sobering point. Weapons are everywhere.
This is absolutely critical to understand. The book is blunt. It takes almost no skill to hurt or kill someone with a knife.
And if you're unarmed against someone who is armed.
You are at a massive disadvantage. Statistically, most homicides involve weapons. You have to assume a weapon could be present, even if you don't see one.
So spotting concealed weapons becomes important. They mention knives are common. What signs should you look for?
They talk about auditory cues, the click of a switchblade opening maybe. Tactile cues, someone bumping into you might be checking for a wallet or creating an opening. Visual cues, bulges under clothing, the outline of a grip. That pocket clip again.
And everyday objects.
Can absolutely become weapons. Hot coffee, a pen to the eye, a heavy bag or chair, anything can be improvised. And they touch on the link between gangs and weapons. It's often just part of the culture. Be observant.
The story linking the Weird Al song to Jeff's stabbing, that's a chilling illustration of domestic violence escalating.
Yeah, it highlights how serious situations can grow from seemingly small conflicts or warning signs that get ignored. Violence rarely comes completely out of the blue. They're usually indicators.
Which ties into the next section. Know when he's eager to hit you?
Right. It brings several threads together. There's usually some kind of buildup, some escalation, even if it's fast or mostly internal for the aggressor. It reminds us most crime happens in those fringe areas, alleys, parking lots, near busy places.
And calling for support can change their mind.
Yes, revisiting that. And words being more important than fighting skills for de-escalation. Recognizing those pre-attack indicators gives you precious seconds.
Admitting mistakes, giving a way out, we covered that. And showing you will defend yourself as a deterrent.
Exactly. Projecting that you're not an easy target. Not looking for a fight, but not willing to be victimized. And again, the Audie Murphy point, don't judge fighting ability by appearance. Underestimation is dangerous.
Never assume. Okay, violence always has consequences. This feels like a crucial reality check.
It really is. There are no clean victories in real violence. The book forces you to ask, what is actually worth fighting for? Because the fallout, physical, legal, emotional, can last a lifetime.
And the advice, there's always someone tougher. Play your own game. Simple, but vital. Avoid fights you don't need to have. Stick to your strengths, which ideally includes avoidance and de-escalation. Choose your battles very, very carefully.
Which leads directly to the core principle. Fighting is your last resort.
Absolutely. The bottom line, you fight only when you have to protect yourself or someone else from harm, when avoidance and de-escalation have failed or aren't possible.
And the legal side is huge here.
Massive. Use too much force or be seen as the one who started it, and you could face assault charges, lawsuits, serious trouble, even if you feel justified. They also bring up the old martial arts idea. End it quickly. Get safe.
The goal is safety, not winning points. They talk about simultaneous and preemptive initiative.
Yeah, simultaneous is like meeting the attack as it happens, intercepting it. Preemptive is spotting the intent before the attack launches and stopping it then. That's ideal, but much trickier legally and practically.
Acting first requires justification, definitely. And they mention the doctrine of competing harms, basically arguing that using force, which is technically illegal, was necessary to prevent a worse outcome, like getting killed or maimed.
But you have to prove that later.
Exactly. It's a defense, not a permission slip. Hence the need for a good lawyer. Understanding the legal lines around self-defense is vital before anything happens.
The story about Dave Organ, the drunk guy, it's funny, but also illustrates non-lethal control and how unpredictable drunk people are.
Yeah, drunks are a whole separate category. The book stresses alcohol's role. It doesn't cause violence, but it lowers inhibitions, fuels aggression that might already be there, impairs judgment drastically.
Your advice is, don't argue with them.
Pretty much. Avoid engaging if possible. Get away. If you have to interact, maybe try disorientation tactics rather than direct confrontation. Avoidance is key.
And using only necessary force? Being aware of perceptions, size differences, gender?
All crucial, especially legally and in terms of how witnesses see things. They mention the controversial never hit a girl unless she's armed idea, reflecting societal views, however complicated.
Yeah.
And critically, you can't claim self-defense if you started the altercation.
You have to be without fault in starting it. They define deadly force too, using Washington law. In contrast, Sensa leave an escape route with Musashi strike swiftly.
Showing different philosophies for different contexts. Military strategy versus personal combat. Legal implications differ hugely.
And the Gary Michael Hilton story, just terrifying, underscores the sheer unpredictability and danger of some individuals.
It really does. The book stresses you need to be mentally prepared to fight and keep fighting, even when hurt. Dealing with multiple attackers, escape is almost always the only viable option.
And never give up. Don't rely on mercy.
Your will to survive can be the deciding factor. Persistence matters.
Okay, so fighting is the last resort, but if it happens, 6 techniques you can use in a fight. This isn't a martial arts course in a few pages, right?
Definitely not. These are presented as basic survival tools, mostly offensive, designed to end the confrontation fast so you can escape. Not a replacement for proper training, which they strongly advise if you're serious.
So the 6. Maintain distance, throw debris, attack the eyes, neck crank strokes, throws, and striking with impetus. Distance seems key, like with Wilder trying to use money, and Tuller's 21-foot rule.
Absolutely. Distance equals reaction time. Throwing stuff, keys, dirt, a drink buys you second creates an opening. Eye attacks are brutal, but effective for stopping someone quickly. It's about creating that chance to get away.
Neck cranks and chokes. They sound dangerous even to mention.
They are. Carotid chokes restrict blood flow. They can work fast, but they underline the lethality of real fights. It's a reminder of why it's a last resort. They mention holds like the guillotine and rear naked choke.
But they warn against going to the ground.
Strongly. In a street fight, being on the ground makes you incredibly vulnerable to kicks, stomps, multiple attackers. Very different from sport grappling.
Throws are mentioned, but need lots of practice. And striking with impetus, using your whole body, targeting vital areas.
Right. And keeping it simple. Adrenaline dumps wreck fine motor skills. Fancy techniques go out the window. Use what's reliable under pressure. Palm heels, elbows, knees. Simple, powerful tools.
They also mention verbal commands during and after.
Yeah, yelling stop or get back can signal to witnesses you're defending yourself, not aggressing. And the principle, play your game. Stick to what you know, even if it's basic. Don't get drawn into their strengths.
Keep it simple, focus on what works. The story about the wrong front kick, Wilder's judo choke attempt, illustrates that gap between training and reality.
Big time. And Kane's experience with stadium fights, the severity of ground injuries, the concert crowd anecdote showing how aggression builds, the cop returning the practice gun training the wrong reflex, it all points to how messy and unpredictable fights are.
And the reminders. They might have weapons you don't see. The jailbird's ambush advice. Injury is likely. Know your own limits physical, even things like clothing restricting movement.
And don't count on help. The bystander effect is real. Even trained officers' accuracy drops massively under stress. The main takeaway: any physical fight is high risk, low reward. Avoid if possible.
Exactly. Avoidance is the best technique. Okay, moving to a larger scale. Dealing with a crowd.
Right. Riots, large disturbances, less common for individuals, but good to understand. The book talks about the psychology
The
involved.
5 factors.
Yeah. Impersonality, feeling lost in the crowd. Anonymity, less accountability. Suggestion and imitation following the group. Emotional contagion, feelings spreading like wildfire. And discharging pent-up emotions using the chaos as an excuse.
Understanding that helps you navigate it.
Hopefully avoid it. Top advice: get out, escape to safety, don't draw attention, don't engage, blend in, and move away from the trouble spots.
They give practical tips for that.
Yes. Recognize escalation signs, sudden surges, chanting. Watch body language, look for agitators, beware of potential weapons like rocks or bottles. Evaluate your options, flee first. Defend only if cornered. Avoid the most agitated parts of the crowd. Escape is the priority.
And after an incident like that, legal rights again.
Crucial. Right to remain silent, need for a lawyer. And the broader costs of violence come up again in first aid, legal battles, witnesses, media, trauma. The fight itself is often just the start.
Which brings us to the final main section, after violence occurs.
Immediate aftermath. Survival first. If you're hurt, deal with it. First aid is critical. And the book acknowledges the trauma, even if you won or acted in self-defense. Taking a life, even justifiably, is huge. The accidental knife cut story?
Reminds you to stay calm and focused even after the threat seems gone.
Exactly. Learn basic first aid, have a kit, know how to handle serious bleeding.
Apply pressure, elevate, maybe, don't pull stuff out.
Right. Basic but potentially life-saving steps. How to handle severed parts, getting immediate help for eye injuries. Practical survival info.
And then the emotional side, PTSD.
It's real. Experiencing or witnessing intense violence can have lasting psychological effects. It's normal, and seeking help is smart. They also talk about critical incident amnesia.
Memory gaps.
Yeah. Adrenaline, sensory overload. Your brain might not record everything accurately or sequentially. Tunnel vision is common too.
Which makes talking to police immediately tricky.
Very. Your memory might be fragmented. The advice is firm. Be polite, be calm, identify yourself, state you want medical attention if needed, and state you want to speak to an attorney before making a detailed statement. Protect yourself legally.
Officers are focused on scene safety and figuring out who's who.
Your priority is control and identifying the aggressor. Find a good lawyer before you need one, someone experienced in self-defense cases. And understand the courts seek resolution, which isn't always the same as your idea of justice.
Be wary of the media, too. The rabbi anecdote.
Shows how stories can get twisted. Don't expect fair or accurate coverage necessarily. The domestic violence call example
Someone's getting arrested, often regardless of the nuances.
illustrates the legal machine in motion. It's complex and stressful, and fights can turn into feuds, long-term harassment, revenge. The consequences ripple outwards.
So the fight is just the beginning, really.
In many ways, yes. The aftermath, physical, emotional, legal, social, is a huge part of the picture.
Okay, so the summary hits those points get in. First aid, emotional recovery, memory issues, caution with police and press, lawyer up, courts want resolution, feuds are possible.
And the conclusion wraps it up with that thought about the true cost of violence. Even winning comes at a price. Survivor guilt, trauma. It lingers. And that final quote.
About the difference between just killing someone and facing someone truly determined to survive. Powerful stuff.
It really is.
So that wraps up our deep dive into the Little Black Book of Violence. Definitely heavy material, but vital knowledge, I think. We hope pulling out these key strategies has been helpful.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. But maybe just reflecting on awareness, de-escalation, how these things apply day to day. If this resonated, the book itself goes much deeper. Well worth reading.
Absolutely. And maybe just leave you with this thought to mull over. How can you personally apply these ideas, awareness, understanding conflict dynamics, knowing your own limits, to navigate your world a little more safely, a little more thoughtfully? Something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.